Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Tower Soccer. Happy Thanksgiving, your turkeys.
The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to answer some listener questions. We'll also discuss this year's Austin FC media game and then talk about some potential player connections. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined once again by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And Landon, we were kind of in a reverse situation of where we often are. I'm sitting at home in my bedroom in Northwest Austin, Texas, and you are somewhere on the South Plains. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Instead of a Marriott, where you normally join in to the call, I'm at in a guest bedroom at my in-laws' house up near Lubbock, Texas.
And do you have and Tito's about somewhere? I think I heard Tito earlier, but he's not in the room.
I kicked him out of the room, but he can apparently bust this door down, so he might join me a bit later. But I have I got Ashley to take a picture of my studio setup, but it's a children's bench with two suitcases stacked on top of one another, and then I have my microphone and my computer on top of that. And then also I'm surrounded by like toys and some haunted dolls. I'll show Jeremiah on camera. I also have a picture of this, so I'll try to post this on social media or something. But there's several dolls that look kind of like this one in this room with me right now.
And those dolls belong to Ashley at some point, or are they just...
They look older than that, so they may have even been like Ashley's moms or something.
I don't know. Okay. Well, hopefully none of them... As someone has seen a lot of horror movies, hopefully none of them come to life and stab you during this recording. You're on your own after that, after the show's over. So you're up there for Thanksgiving. Do y'all have any kind of... You eat like the traditional stuff, or is there anything sort of unique or different?
We normally do the traditional stuff here with Ashley's family, but both of Ashley's parents had surgery recently, and so it's the kids' show this year. We're all making all the food, and so we decided we're not doing that anymore. And so Ashley's brother's going to make a brisket, and we're just going to have brisket sides.
Oh, that sounds pretty tasty in that way too. So yeah, we go up, we do all the traditional stuff every year, and then we're going to come back on Friday morning and make what is either going to be a fun or terrible decision to hang out with a bunch of friends who are kind of evenly split among being Longhorn fan or Aggies fans and watch the Texas A&M game together on Saturday night. So we'll see if we all still get along or not after that's over.
I'll be sure to read the newspaper the next day to see if anything went wrong.
See what happened. Yeah. You want to talk about the media game?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that on.
We got the chance to go back to the media game this year that the Austin FC comms department puts on every year. Got to play on the pitch at Q2 Stadium, which is it never gets old. Very, very cool every time we get to do it. Yeah, do you have any highlights from your experience there? They always put us on separate teams. So my team won this year, but I think your team had the MVP on it.
Yes, these continue to be defensive struggles. So I was 10 for the Verde and 7 for the Black this year. And Hernan scored 5 goals, including a couple really, really pretty ones. So that was definitely a highlight. You know, you mentioned that we always enjoy being on the pitch.
He posterized me on his first one.
Was that you that was there on the first one?
I'm sure there's going to be photos coming out of...
Hernan explains those things as if it was that was a simple play, but that was not. That is not something that's in my arsenal to be able to pull off. I don't know about you.
I think there's a question of ability, which I clearly don't have the ability to do that, but also as a man of my age, I try not to let the ball hit me in the head when I don't absolutely have to let it hit me in the head. So I probably could have challenged him a little bit more on this play, but I just didn't want to.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to one thing you said. It is a delight for us to be on the pitch. I think Cam was saying that the groundskeepers is probably not a delight for them. They were on that pitch with just the dragging of feet and the plodding, and the fact that we were wearing, cleats from Academy and not high-end like shoes or like boots that professional players wear. So thanks to the grounds crew for putting up with us every year.
He did tell us last year that the grounds crew said that that was the most destructive event to the field the entire year, was the media game. And they have concerts there. Like Willie Nelson's 4th of July concert is there, and said, no, media game is worse.
And they were already out on the tractors, like as soon as we cleared the field, trying to kind of put things back together.
Yeah, damage control.
Well, let's go to the question from Robino 2001. These are all from Blue Sky, but this is the first of the listener questions that we get off Blue Sky. And that was, what new friends did you make at the media game, and who was the dirtiest player at the media game? I thought everybody played clean. Like I don't remember, there was not a lot of heavy tackles. Laura caught a ball off the face, but that was like just a freak accident.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I think Nick Bannon, the weatherman, put in a pretty strong challenge on Eric Goodman at one point, but I don't think it was dirty by any means. Yeah, so it was a pretty friendly, clean game. Any new friends? I think it's mostly just like connecting with folks that we don't get to see a lot. Did you get to meet anybody new?
I don't think I talked to anybody that was completely new. I ended up talking to Sean Mack from Mix 94.7 for probably more than I've ever talked to him my whole life put together, just because we were putting our shoes on right next to each other. So it was good to talk to Sean. But yeah, a lot of us reconnecting. I get to listen to Bob Blue and Eric Goodman argue the Quinn Ewers versus Arch Manning never-ending debate after the match was over. But just all around, just like a good group of people.
Yeah, definitely. You heard Jeremiah mention that these questions are from Blue Sky, so we're trying something out. So for various reasons to do with Twitter, both I guess moral and functional, we're dipping our toes into the Blue Sky waters to see if we can get some momentum there. And there seems to be some real momentum there with just in general, but then in the Austin FC community as well. So we decided we'd do our part to try to create some more momentum in this new space where the Austin FC community is gathering. So we're just doing a little experiment, asked for some questions on Blue Sky, and we got a pretty good response. So we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and get into some of the MLS news. So we've started seeing teams release their free agent list, and that's because everybody who has been eliminated by Wednesday will have to have announced the players have contracts. So we've seen a lot of these decisions come through. December 12th is when free agency actually opens, and I just looking at this, we don't get the official list until December 10th, but we can put pieces together from the league, but we can piece it together from what the teams have already announced. Let's start with kind of two related questions about who we would want to see in Austin. One's from Logan Clark. Are there any players that have a contract you'd like to see in Austin? One's from Carl GK. Would you take a flyer on Josef Martinez or Hector Herrera? Talk about maybe why this roster construction complicates players that you might take a flyer on like that.
Yeah, I was looking through some of the teams that have announced recently, and in a vacuum, there are quite a few players that I'm not saying like 100% want Austin to sign, but would want Austin FC to take a look at and just see if they think they would be a good fit. But again, that is in a vacuum. We do not live in this vacuum of which I speak. We live in the reality of this Austin FC roster. And the reality is we can't afford to sign any people that we expect to be role players. We can't sign anybody that we don't think is going to be a nailed on starter game in and game out. That's just the state of this roster. We've got 4 senior roster spots. All of them could potentially be used on these high profile roster spots being DPs or U22s. And I think we need to use all of those spots on DPs and U22s. If we are to move somebody by chance, if somebody got traded, got sold, whatever, got bought out, then yeah, there's a few of these guys I would like to see them take a look at. But otherwise, no, I don't think I want any of them.
Yeah, it's a hard position to be in, but Austin's already got at least a couple guys to the point who are eating roster, who are eating salary, who are role players that just remove all of the flexibility that this team is going to have. So I'm kind of in the same place. I mean, some names are interesting. Like I think Albert Rusnak is always going to be an interesting name. Not super productive though, I think, and maybe not even in this system. Like Tim Parker is a good player, but we've got a lot of center backs.
Yeah, staying with Seattle, Joao Paulo, he just wasn't that healthy this year. He's getting a little older, so there's some risk there. And there's a good chance a lot of these players end up re-signing, or there's going to be like the ones that are attractive, there's going to be competition for them. Raheem Edwards is one that, again, like if we had our starting 11 settled and just wanted some competition at like a fullback back position, he's not that expensive. He's still just like 28, I think. But I just don't think we can afford to go after guys like that. For Carl's question, though, Josef Martinez and Hector Herrera, those are guys that could potentially be starters and have been starters in this league a lot. Would you want to see either of those guys come in?
I would say no for different reasons. I think for Herrera, I think he's still a super talented player and he could contribute, but I think he started 19 matches last year, and it just feels like a lot of salary to have pinned into a guy who may or may not play more than half your games, even though he's going to look really good and contribute to the club when he does, and probably honestly at a spot where there's some need given the absence of talent in the midfield with Martinez. It feels like another old forward who's on the downside of his career, and I just like psychologically cannot handle the next José Zardes move, or even worse.
Yeah, and a lot of injury stuff with Josef over the last several years. The end of this last season, he did start to show flashes of what he was once capable of, but it just feels too risky to bring him in at this point. It would make me very nervous. And then Hector, I agree with everything you said. Also, I just don't like him.
To be fair.
Regarding these roster construction dates, we have another question from Barely Regal here. He says, never too early to start looking at he says super draft. I think he's meaning, the super draft, and then who you see as our 12 protected players in the expansion draft. So we will cover that at some point. I think we're going to wait until we get a little closer to those dates and have some more info. But the expansion draft, if you'll remember, San Diego is going to get to just pluck some players off of other teams, and Austin is going to be eligible to have players taken. So that will be a fun thing to do once we get a little closer to that date, is who should Austin protect? Like, which players are we going to leave unprotected? And then which players do we not have to protect because of their roster designation? So yeah, we'll definitely cover that on a future show.
Yeah, that's always a fun one to get into and sort of debate the reasons why you would do one thing or another thing. So I guess Barely Regal's point is it's never too early to start looking, but our point is it's too early in this offseason to start discussing on the show. So we'll get into it. Plus, we're sort of in a little bit for the next couple of weeks of a dead period where it will be nice to have something like that to talk about and fill up more time in a week or two.
We have another question here from Barton Marks. Barton says, we just let half our midfield contracts go. It's now our biggest need. What can we do during the transfer window? First of all, I want to maybe discuss just the premise of the question. Do you think midfield is our biggest need?
I still think a striker is our biggest need.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you frame the question. Like in the starting 11, I think a striker is our biggest need. But if you look at the depth chart, we kind of only have 3 midfielders at the moment. So as far as numbers go, I think midfield is what we need most. But then quality, or the quality in the starting 11, I think striker is the answer.
To the question itself, I think that Austin needs to do something in the transfer window, and Austin needs to do something in the transfer window at a fairly high level. This is top 2 priority, right? So I don't think it's one of those where you go out and acquire a MLS veteran that you maybe overpay for, or I don't know if you can really even rely on a U22 kind of type at this situation, given the lack of depth. It seems one where Austin needs to invest pretty big.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think we don't have to. If we want to be a competitive team, I think we have to bring in a starter in the midfield. And I think we'll get into some questions from Queets Lawak a little later where it will become clear that he disagrees with me, and we'll maybe have some punishments in mind for disagreeing with him. But I think if Danny Pereira and Owen Wolf are the starting central midfielders on this team. Two guys with a lot of upside, a lot of promise. I think if both of them are starting, that's not a very solid midfield at this point. I think Owen still needs to cook a little bit more. If he can have someone start ahead of him and then be that first rotation piece off the bench, he'll still get a lot of minutes, a lot of playing time, gain some more experience, but have someone in front of him who can be like the real load-bearing piece. And to that point, there's been rumors about a player. We talked last week, Mike and I talked last week about Paulo Diaz from River Plate, which seems a little bogus to me. I don't think that one is happening. Marvin Dukes doesn't seem bogus. Seems like it would be a spot of need, but maybe just unattainable. It just seems like it's going to be a tough putt to actually get that one over the line if they're looking at him. One that we forgot to talk about last week is the Hercules rumor that came up a while back. I saw this one pop up again on a Brazilian website recently. This is a 24-year-old midfielder that plays for Fortaleza, plays alongside Tomas Pochettino at Fortaleza. This is one, as far as profile, age, like this would actually be a pretty good fit. I don't know how legit this rumor is. I've watched some tape on him. I didn't go super deep just because whenever we start hearing more believable rumors, I'll do a deeper dive. But I did watch some tape on him. First impressions, I don't think he's going to be a guy to come in and revolutionize this team and make us competitors on his own. But I do think he's a guy who could come in and start in this midfield probably.
Yeah, so when you think about him as a player or whatever profile he fits, like is there somebody that he's either on the roster or that you can think of in the league that he's somewhat like?
On the Austin team, like Alex Ring would be the most similar player. Like he's, I think he's like pretty squarely in that like box to box 8 category. He seems pretty skillful with the ball at his feet, so like a better dribbler than Alex Ring. And I think probably a better like attacking threat than Alex Ring, but he's still just not like an out and out 10, like nose for goal kind of midfielder. And it's not just like a straight up deep lying destroying 6. And so for those reasons, I'm still not sure he's like the perfect fit, but I do think he would be an upgrade from the midfielders we just let go.
Okay. And I guess we'll hear a little bit more over time. You know, it's this kind of season where you get rumor after rumor after rumor, and most of them seem to not pan out to be true. And it seems like Roto is definitely really good at keeping things under wraps in maybe a way that Claudio, Reyna, and some of the other factors involved in previous Austin FC regimes were not. So we'll just kind of report what we have whenever we have it. I wrote this as a note, so you can tell me no, and we could skip it. But like, did you go to an academy game? Was it last weekend?
I did, yeah. I went 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I went this last weekend as well.
So how are they looking?
They scraped out a draw. I just went to the U18 game. They played Colorado Rapids. They scraped out a draw 1-1 against the Rapids. And so back when I was going a lot a couple of years ago, Micah Burton and Brian Arellano, and then it was when Irvin Torres was starting to come up and play with that age group. Those guys all looked like stars out there. I don't know that there's that many players who like just pop out on the field like that. But at the same time, I think there might be more players on the team who will become like long-term pros, if that makes sense.
Just like solid, lots of solid dudes, maybe no superstars.
Yeah, and like I'm still like not sure what to think about Gavin Wolf. He's enormous and is super smooth on the ball, plays really clean, sharp passes, but I just keep not like I want to see him just get really challenged, like have a team go at them and pin them down in the box and see what he can do, like just doing straight up center back stuff, because the teams that I've seen, they just straight up thumped Kansas City when I went, and he had not much to do on the defensive end. And then Colorado plays kind of like what their first team did, where they would super organized mid-block press and then would try to counter the other way. And so, I still want to see more, but definitely very talented. And his partner is named Mason Miller, and I think he got some minutes for the second team. And he's maybe a couple of years older than Gavin Wolf even, but Mason Miller is really solid. But again, it's so hard to judge in that, like in that context when Mason is significantly older than a lot of the kids on the field. And so like, how many points do you dock him for that? And like, what does that mean for his projection as he gets older? I really don't know.
Well, let's go ahead and we've got a lot of listener questions, so we'll get through these as we can. So let's take our first break, and then we will get back into some more details about what folks wanted to hear.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education, and they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. We're going to dig into some more listener questions. We try to maybe gather some of these into some categories, but it's mostly going to be pretty random as far as which topics we're covering and in what order. So let's just start with the first one on this list. And it's from Scott Specht. Scott asks, what's your preferred MLS playoff format? Jeremiah, do you have a preferred format?
I do. Yeah, I like the format. I liked the top 7 with the first place team getting a bye. Single elimination format we had in 2022. I felt like one, it made a reward for finishing first. I felt like it made those games exciting. I felt like that did not have the playoffs lasting all the way through an international break and then coming back again. Not a huge fan of the round of 3 in the first round. You know, and I get why home and home's kind of complicated. So I would go with that format being my preferred. How about you?
I think I agree with that, except for the bye. I kind of don't think the bye is beneficial to the team who's getting the rest. In a situation where there's like a wild card game or whatever, and okay, you get to play the wild card on short rest because they play the wild card game on Wednesday, and then you play the same week in the first round on Saturday, and then you're not like sitting cold for 2 or 3 weeks while you're waiting for everyone else to catch up to you on that round. I think that would be my only change to your preferred one. If it were to be like a home and home kind of thing where each team gets a home game, I see some value in that as well. One thing I will say, and I think this is maybe an unpopular opinion, is that I really hate aggregate goals in soccer series like this. It's just like, it only exists in this sport. I don't think there's any other sport where the score of one game is carried over and affects the score of the next game. And I think sometimes it can lead to some exciting things sometimes, but I just really hate a situation where you can win a game and lose the series, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that can happen. Or I mean, it does happen, right? Where you lost by 2 or 3 goals in the first match and you win by 1 in the second one in the return leg, and then get knocked out. No, it's a weird forward. It's like each game is really only a half, right? When you're playing it that way.
Yeah, and that's one thing I have liked about this best of 3 thing that we're doing now, is that each game is like a fresh game and teams will go out and win them, as opposed to like in an aggregate home and away kind of thing. If you a freak thing happens, you get a red card or whatever. It sucks for that game, but then you're also being punished in the next game for a freak thing that maybe happens in the first game. And so like I just really don't like that format and think it's strange that that's so prominent in this sport.
All right, well, let's go on to BMA 93. Tell me your ideal roster build if you had a blank slate. What spots are you using DPs on, U22s, TAM, etc.?
Yeah, I think let's maybe just focus on those like the premium roster designations. So like the DPs and the U22s. I think if we're just going off of like where you're getting the most bang for your buck, and then like where's shown historically to be the most beneficial place to spend the money, I think you should use DPs on a striker, an attacking midfielder, and then maybe a winger or something like that. And then the U22s, maybe the other winger, one of your midfielders, and then maybe the other midfielder. I don't know, but like attacking just in the front five of the field. I think that's just historically speaking, that's where people spend the money. That's where you get the most bang for your buck for your money. And that's how you win games, is by scoring goals.
Yeah, the only change I would maybe say to that is I feel like with U22s, it's so unknown, because it's so new. I feel like the U22s, you should go wherever you think you can find talent that's a value. But I definitely think like DPs in the attack. And it's, and you have the option of using like more DPs and for your U22s and all that, like as many DPs as possible first in the attack, and then U22s on wherever you think you have holes to plug and where you've identified players who can do that.
Yeah, I think this Kevin Trahan question kind of folds into this topic pretty well. He says, assuming we're bringing in a new 9, a winger, and a starting midfielder, do you have any preference on which roster designation we use for each position? For instance, is it important that the 9 be a DP, as many are expecting, rather than a U22 or a high TAM player? So BMA 93's question was, if you had a blank slate. Kevin's question is, no, we don't have a blank slate. In this roster, how would you use it? And I think my question might be, or my answer might be different.
Oh, this is intriguing. So give me your answer, and then I'll add on to that.
I think because, okay, I'll set this up this way. Attacking midfielders have shown to be kind of the most successful DP position. Like if you think of the best players in MLS history, the highest profile, most successful attacking players, most of them have been number 10s. Austin FC kind of already has a number 10, but not really. And so my concern is if we throw all our eggs into the number 9 basket and then are trying to just scrape together the pieces with the other positions, is that, okay, we have this great number 9, but probably still don't have all the pieces to get that number 9 a lot of great service. And so that's where I could see you prioritizing a midfield spot or that left wing spot and bring in someone who you do think can be that highly creative player. And then maybe that player opens up Driussi to score some more goals and provides Driussi and whoever the number 9 is, be that a TAM player or U22 or whoever, can give them service. And then Driussi can kind of pick up the slack that in goal scoring that maybe you're giving up by not going for the number 9 DP.
So would you say if forced to choose between the two, so like let's say not a number 9, do you feel like the bigger need still like a creative player? And I feel like in the midfield is like your better position to be that way. Would you, if you had one signing to make in a DP?
Yeah,
was that what you do?
Again with Driussi complicates it just because. Again, ideally, yeah, I would go sign the best number 10 you can sign, but when you already have Driussi locked into this lineup, like it's hard to say just go get the best attacking player because we still don't have any ball winners. And so yeah, I don't know that that's even the right answer, but this roster's complicated, man.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to take a little while to unwind it just because of the way the pieces, or not unwind it, but like recreate it just because of the way that the pieces fit together. The good thing is there's definitely more flexibility this offseason than there ever has been before. And I feel like there's a sporting director who is not necessarily going to spend every dollar we have available just to do it. So there's probably some creativity during the winter. And then I feel like we're probably going to be in a situation where we may be holding out until the summer. We may be hoping, again, this team holds on until the summer window comes along and maybe finds a difference maker.
Oh man, I hope you're wrong, but I think you might be right. All that to say, like, I would be totally fine with a DP as the number 9. My concern is, like, we still need to find that creative spark from somewhere. Maybe Bukhari is enough to open space for other players. Whoever the midfielder is can bring in, like, enough of that to the table to kind of fill in some of those gaps. But yeah, we'll see.
All right, let's go to this one from Troy Bierke. Do you see us making more U22 signings, or is that just a mechanism this team doesn't care much about? Is it an academy maturity thing?
No, I think Roto will definitely go after U22 signings. I think we couldn't really before, just because of the roster designations we had. No, I guess I'm already forgetting the old rules. We could have had 3 U22 spots last year because Alex Ring was like a max TAM DP, right?
Correct. But you were
okay.
Somewhat hamstrung by the U22s, all of these U22s being international and the number of international slots being available.
And also senior roster spots, because we were tied up there as well. So I don't think it's necessarily a thing that the club doesn't care about. I think we got it wrong with the first ones we signed being Jean Kolmanich, Rodney Redes, and Musa Jite was the other one, right?
Yep.
And so none of those guys made a big difference on this team. And so I definitely trust Rodolfo Burrell more with those kinds of spots than I do Claudio Reyna. And so I think it would make sense for him to go after U22s, and I kind of think he will. I think it is a good question to see if he'll go for all of them, like maximizing those spots. But I do think we'll see some more U22 signings.
Let's go to this question from Logan. If you could find out one MLS secret, would you rather know about Brad Stuver's game day hair care or what Bruce Arena said to get fired from New England?
Do you have an answer to this one?
Well, the realistic one I've chased for years and don't know the answer to is Brad Stuver's game day hair care. I feel like if we were the first people to find out what Bruce said to get fired from New England, that would be a pretty big deal for us. So, like, selfishly, I would go with that one.
So your answer makes me think you're going to be mad about my answer.
Okay, go for your answer.
Is because I found out what the hair thing was.
Oh, you did?
But I forgot.
Oh, no.
So I don't want to give too much away about who told me what it was, but somebody figured out what the game day hair product was and told me about it. And I just, like, maybe if I were in the market for something like that, I would have made a better mental note, but I have no recollection of what the product was.
I mean, I've had Brad tell me that even his barber doesn't know what he's using. Like, he fakes him out with whatever he uses on game day. So, like, I assume that he wanted to keep that secret. And he did actually weigh in.
Maybe the one I was showed is a decoy as well. So maybe I'm wrong too. But either way, it's gone from my head. So your secret is still safe, Brad.
Okay, so how about the Bruce Arena one then?
Yeah, I would take that one just because clearly the other one's not going to stick. So let's break some news and find out what Bruce said.
All right. Let's get on to the next one, which you teased already with a midfield. So do you want to read this one?
Yes, this is from Cuitlawak El Profe, who is known in this group chat that I'm in with him as Trollfe because of some of the questions he asked, and I think you'll get that tone here. His question is, how dominant will the Wolfera midfield, that's a combination of Wolf and Pereira, How dominant will the Wolf era midfield be, and what should be done to those who doubt Owen and Danny? Banishment or exile? I already kind of answered this before, but I don't think that midfield would be all that dominant. And yeah, Profe, you can banish me or exile me if you'd like, but that's what I believe.
I don't necessarily. I don't mind as much those two guys being the starter. There needs to be a third player who's just as good, who's pushing both of them, or even better, who is the starter. I feel like Austin had a very incomplete midfield last year, and I don't think that they could just rely on those guys to play all, every single match. But if there was somebody who could eat up just as much time, and maybe most importantly added a different profile that did something differently to add to that group, then I'm fine with them splitting time. So I don't know if that leads me banished or exiled or not, but I'm not gonna venture too far from the way that you went with this one.
So the first option that you said is someone who is on that level and pushing for time. I think that is the minimum we can do to not be a bottom dweller.
Go backwards
in the West again. I like these two players a lot, but if you look at midfields around the league, the midfields who are still playing playoff games right now, Danny Pereira and Owen Wolf are not starters in any of them. And that's just a reality. That's fact. And so I think you have to bring someone who will start probably over Owen Wolf at this point. Owen's still going to get a lot of minutes. He's still going to be the first guy thrown into the game and should get those minutes. But if we're relying on him to start every game or most games, I think that spells trouble for this team. Not because he's bad, just because he's not there yet. And I think he just needs some more time.
All right, our next question from Emma C. What is the probability of using our buyout on Zardes, and when would that be likely to happen? Parentheses, nothing against the guy, only his contract.
Yeah, I think Mike and I answered a version of this on the show last week, but I think this is a good place for you to chime in. Do you think, I guess, what is the probability? Do you think there's a chance they actually use a buyout on Jussi Zardes?
I think with how far along he is on his current contract, and given last season's, not being afraid to do that, he seems fairly likely. I mean, if you want to free up salary in a position of need, he seems like the most likely candidate. But that doesn't, somebody could get hurt, somebody could underperform, right? I mean, there are other things that might happen, but it seems like Zardes is a likely candidate if you have a replacement of some sort in place. I mean, you don't just get rid of him to get rid of him if you don't have another number 9 to bring in. But if Burrell has identified a 9 that can contribute, Jussi seems like the most surplus to requirements of anybody that we have on this club.
Yeah, and I think another factor is Anthony Precourt willing to do that again, Precourt and co, the whole ownership group. Are they willing to continue to pay? They were paying Emiliano Rigoni and Osman Bukhari at the same time. They're now paying Josh Wolf and Nico Estevez at the same time. Is he willing to continue paying double salaries for players and, I guess, employees that no longer work here? And that's essentially what a buyout is you're paying someone to go away and then paying someone else to do the job they were supposed to be doing. And it'll be interesting to see if the ownership group has lost patience with doing that and are going to let it happen again.
But I think the ownership group's also maybe at the point now where you have to look at the results of the last 2 years, and maybe you have to eat another contract if there's a way to make the team better to generate more fan excitement, get some playoff games and things like that for 2025.
Yeah, I agree with you. We'll see if Uncle Tony agrees with you or not.
Yeah, it's not our money, right? It's really easy to say that on his behalf. Well, Kevin, speaking of Uncle Tony, Kevin Morris wants to know if Uncle Tony will ever buy him a beer for his birthday. Landon, what is your inside knowledge about Anthony Precourt's proclivity to buy alcohol for other people?
Didn't he buy y'all beer at the first Den Verde game?
He did. Well, I mean, ultimately he did.
Or was that Andy?
It was on Andy Lockname, but I'm assuming that like Precourt signs his expense reports and it was approved. So it's a possibility, right, Kevin? If you happen to be somewhere where Precourt is and an event happens that you get a beer, but maybe not just a birthday beer.
So the start of this was one of the long weather delays. It was on Kevin's birthday. And so Kevin used his delay to just keep tweeting at Anthony Precourt saying like, it's my birthday, will you buy me an electric jellyfish? And just like kind of kept the bit going until the game started again. And Precourt never bit and
never
Kevin
worked,
never got that beer.
Oh. Well, let's do one more and then we'll take a break. This is a Trevor Allison question. And what baseball position would each Austin FC player play? Or at least a full baseball defensive lineup of Austin FC players. Then later he clarified that this was slow pitch softball. And I don't think that either one of us have any interest or probably enough knowledge about slow pitch softball to go through all 10 positions on the team. But do you have some ideas about where some guys might play?
Well, I was looking at at our roster, and it's like, oh, this guy looks like he'd be like a second baseman. But then you go down the list and soccer players are all small guys. And like, they're all second basemen. Every one of them is a second baseman.
Where does everybody play? Yeah.
Brad Stuver's going to pitch because he's the only tall one. Julio Cascante. Oh, Cascante's a first baseman, right?
Cascante's going to be a first baseman, I think. Yeah. I feel like Hector would play shortstop because he seems pretty rangy. Even at his age, he seems like he's pretty, able to run back and forth, and he just seems to have that kind of dad energy where he would work hard enough to be pretty good at it, regardless of whether he was naturally skilled or not. Who else?
My spicy take is that Hector should play shortstop, but would be shunted over to second base because Driussi plays shortstop, and he's too expensive to kick out of the position.
So he just plays wherever he wants to play. That's fair. That's
right.
Yeah, that one works.
I was reading through the rest of that question, and he was saying like, what position would people play? If we're being realistic about this, I have experience that has taught me what my real answer is. And the real answer is I'm putting all of the American players in the infield and then putting anybody else in the outfield, because I played on an adult rec league kickball team in college. And it was with my friends who were all like master's students in the linguistics program at Texas Tech. And so it was a bunch of international students, and we brought them into the kickball team. And okay, Jeremiah, if you had someone joining your kickball team and they asked you the rules of kickball, your answer would probably be, oh, it's just like baseball with a few different rules.
Correct.
But then if that person had never seen a baseball game and didn't know any of the rules to baseball,
how do you describe baseball? That
yes,
becomes very difficult. You're right.
It's such a complicated game. Like telling someone to tag up when the ball's in the air, and then once it gets caught, then you touch the base and you can run. Like, this is impossible. You cannot explain these things to people in like a short amount of time. And so what we did in this kickball league is exactly what I just said. We put all the Americans in the infield. We put Helga, this German guy, and then Ruben, a Spanish guy, in the outfield because they could catch the ball, they could throw the ball hard. And then whenever they are up to bat, we just told them to kick it as hard as they can and then never stop running, because the base running rules were too complicated and there was always so many errors that I would say 80% of the time they end up getting an inside the park home run just because of errors and them being really fast. But whenever they tried to like actually follow the rules, they would usually get tagged out. And so we're like, okay, no more rules.
Mind.
Just kick it hard and run fast.
I love it, man. I think that's probably a good spot to end this question. So maybe let's take our second break and finish up these questions and wrap the show up. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience.
If you're someone you know or in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Moon Tower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, state, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and Austin FC's march to the 2025 playoffs. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information.
Okay, well, let's go to this question from Zach. The club keeps being linked to players who are older than the desired at positions of need. Do you think this is just agents trying to rumor mill their clients into a final solid contract before retirement, or actual evidence Roto's keeping up with the oops, all of our strikers are 30-plus tradition alive? I think a lot of these player rumors so far are probably agent things who believe they have players who meet a need that they believe that Austin has, and there's not a lot of smoke behind these. Like, Rotos does not seem like the kind of guy that's going to continue to make the same mistakes that Claudio Reyna did with constructing the initial roster.
I think it might be a combination of both things that Zach mentions here, because part of the mistakes that Claudio made was bringing in guys who are over 30 who were like already not performing. Like Jossie had already seen a dip, and we were just kind of hoping he could come back to what he was, and that never happened, and apparently was never going to happen. But the ones before, like Danny Houston was not a world beater in MLS. Like I'm trying to think of who, Maxi Urruti, like we, even in the best season we had him, we got as good as Maxi Urruti ever was. And so if we are going to go after 30 plus strikers, like Marvin Dukes is a guy, like he'll be 30 at the start of next season, I think, but he's like banging in goals in the Bundesliga. He's not a free agent from San Jose or whatever. And so I think the ones we've been hearing lately are a little bit different, and strikers who score goals are expensive. That's just that's just true. And if you buy one who's like 30 years old, it might be a little cheaper. And so I could see that being a path that they're going. But yeah, like I said, if they are going to go that route, at least make it someone who is still producing at 30 years old and not someone who's already shown that they're dipping or maybe never really performed at a super high level.
Yeah, or just praying they get it back. I feel like Rubio kind of falls under that too, where it's like, oh, if he was as good as he was 2 years ago, then everything will be fine. And
right.
That did not come to pass.
Yeah.
Elise has got one that I think we've touched on. I think you kind of answered a couple weeks ago, but just to be clear on this one. So has Irvin Torres surpassed Micah Burton development-wise? What do you think the past/potential impact moving forward is? I mean, it's kind of what you were hinting at when you talked about Irvin being with the national team group that Micah used to be with and Micah not being there. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, no, I do think that Irvin is seen as a higher prospect than Micah at this point. That being said, I don't think Micah's done. Like, he's still quite young, and I think still has a good chance of becoming an MLS player. But yeah, if I were putting my eggs in only one basket, it would be Irvin Torres. All that being said, Irvin did play with the U18 group the other day when I was out there when they were playing Colorado. He played the first half with them, which is crazy. Like he played, I don't know how many, like thousands of minutes with Austin FC2 this year. And he's still eligible for the U18 team for at least one more year, if not 2 more years. And so he played a half with them. He honestly did not look like he didn't blow everyone out of the water. I think partially just due to not having played with that group that much. And then it's just hard to move around like that. So I'm not judging his trajectory on this one game because we've seen what he can do elsewhere over and over and over. So, but there were still like moments where he would receive in between spaces or play a little 1-2 with someone and play a pass and be like, oh, okay, there it is. This is the guy that I've seen. So he does stand out if you know to watch for it, but I'd say he kind of had a rough game for his standards the other day. So he's still got a ways to go, but he's so young. So young. Like,
yeah, he's so young. He's
lots of time.
Yeah, he's going to have down days. How about Julian Devereaux? Do you think there's a specific style of play that's most effective at MLS, or is it too difficult to say? I think LA Galaxy proves like have a lot of really, really talented players. Seems to be the style of play that works the best. be better than everybody else, and it's usually successful. I don't know. What do you feel like there's a style that has worked before a lot, or I feel like it's been a mix. I feel like the coaches are able to adapt their play to the strengths and weaknesses of the players they have is the best style, and that's different depending upon different clubs and different roster profiles.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And I think number one is have better players than everyone else. Number two, I tend to subscribe to David Goss's take on this is like, it doesn't really matter which style you choose, but choose a style and go all in on it and like be good at it. And I think that matters as opposed to like not having a style period or maybe being a little bit wishy-washy on it. But I will say it seems like the teams that have tried to go the full-on energy drink pressing kind of thing, Red Bulls mainly have done this several years. Well, they'll look really good for stretches of the season and start to flag by the end, and then come playoff time, they're not there anymore, and they can't really make it work in the playoffs. I don't think that's like an inherent truth necessarily, but there are issues with trying to play that high of an intensity game all season long. So I think there's some flaws there, but yeah, I mean, I think picking a style, having some principles, trying to be balanced, and then having better players than everyone. And I think LAFC is a great example of that. I know they lost, but and then the Galaxy is kind of a different version of that, where it's like, oh, we don't care if you score on us. We're just going to score as many goals as we can, and it doesn't matter what you do.
And it seems to work for them really well. I think, what you mentioned about sort of that energy drink style of play, that's especially true in Major League Soccer, right? Where your team, just no team is going to be deep enough to be able to do that season long without wearing guys out. Elise has an off-topic conversation that is definitely relevant to where we both are, or where you are and where I will be tomorrow. What's your go-to strategy for soothing awkward Thanksgiving dinner conversations? Has there been an epic gone wrong Thanksgiving Day conversation in the past? I will say, for me, I mean, in knowing that nobody in my family listens, so it doesn't really matter. We've managed to avoid. I've never had an epic gone wrong conversation in the past where somebody was very mad at somebody else and it kind of went sideways. I am very good at removing myself from any conversation that starts to get awkward, which is why I told Jackson to be sure to bring his Xbox. And so we'll be playing some EAFC or college football as soon as things get weird with the in-laws. That's my strategy, is to avoid it. I don't know. How about you?
No, same. We've not really. I've never been in a situation where it got real bad, but I have learned in recent years, especially, that when certain conversations start, I will just leave the room. And I guess on an earnest note, I was actually listening to a podcast the other day. This guy named Dan Harris has a podcast called 10% Happier, and he talks about meditation and stuff a lot, but he had an episode come out the other day that was kind of like a list of tips for if you're worried about handling holiday stuff, here's a bunch of things you could try. And I think he prefaced it by saying this is a menu, not a checklist. And so it's kind of like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall. But if you're genuinely interested in finding some strategies, I would recommend checking that out and just finding some of the things that he recommended and just picking one to focus on.
And I assume, I don't know if that would be the case or not, but our approach of avoiding awkward conversations and not digging on them, surely that has to be one of the things that you can do to make it all better.
Yeah, I remember one thing he said in the episode was trying to ask a question and understand the person's viewpoint, because most people all they want is to be heard and to feel like someone was listening to them. So that's one strategy. And he said the other strategy, if you don't think that one's going to work, is don't say anything. Nobody can force you to have a conversation you don't want to have. So just silence. Choose that option.
So there's nothing wrong with that one for sure. Well, how about these are going to be, I think, our last two here from Pedro. One soccer question, one non-soccer question. Soccer question is, do player rumors provide an accurate account of the type of team that Austin is building, or is it all poppycock? What do you think? That feels like a little bit chicken or eggy. I feel like in some ways the types of players that people think Austin wants are the players that Austin gets linked to, whether they're realistic or not. And then I don't know. What's your take on it?
No, I think it's a similar answer to what you're saying about the Zach's question about the over 30 players. It's like, we don't know how many of these rumors are legitimate. And so it's hard to know like how accurate of a picture it's painting. Because if we just knew the accurate ones or the ones they were actually going after, that would paint an accurate picture of what they're trying to build. But we just don't know which ones made up and which ones are the ones where there was actual contact or interest. So, yeah, it's really hard to say, but it like based on some of the rumors we've seen lately, I would say it's mostly poppycock, and that you probably shouldn't put a lot of stock in a lot of them.
It's something for podcasters and content creators to have to talk about or write about during the off season that is probably not relevant to the real world. So this fun question is a typical Friday night in the year 1997. What are our Moon Tower hosts doing? I want to reframe this a little bit, because I know that we're different ages. So I would say it's a typical Friday night, and you're old enough to have a car and access to Subway with a fake ID in small town Texas. Like what does that look like for you? So like where things you can do like good wholesome things, or maybe if you work hard enough, there's like danger and adventure ahead. Like what did that? Your parents are listening, so you probably I don't know how honest you can be about it, but like where did your natural behavior tend to go when you're in those situations?
I've said this stuff in front of them before, so I'm okay with it. But I'll give the answer to the real question, Pedro's real question. So Friday night in the year 1997, I was 10 years old, and so I was going to like small town high school football games. And I looked back at like what was happening that year, and I was probably having the time of my life. We actually had a great football team that year that lost by a field goal in the like quarterfinals, and the team that beat us went on and thumped the next two teams to win the state championship. So I got to watch a lot of really good football that year as a 10-year-old and was having the time of my life. And then the next spring, a lot of those same guys went to the state tournament in basketball. And so that's what 10-year-old Landon was doing on Friday nights. To answer Jeremiah's question, I was in like my class in high school, again, super small high school. There, I think I graduated with 37 people, very far away from any city. We also lived in a dry county. And so anybody in that town, even people who were of legal age to buy it, it was still really hard to get alcohol. You had to drive an hour up until I think like the last couple of years I was in high school. Then the neighboring county got like passed the law to be able to sell alcohol within it. And then you still had to drive 20 miles, I think. So when I was in high school, we did not drink or do drugs or any of that wild stuff. But I think we probably would have been safer drinking and doing drugs than the things that we chose to do instead. Because we would just like catch stuff on fire or drive cars too fast. We had like a Molotov cocktail phase that ended with one of our friends going to the hospital with like 2nd or 3rd degree burns on his leg. And so I think we would have been safer doing what my brother's class did a few years ahead of us and just driving out to a dirt road and drinking beer.
That was my experience. We were about 20 miles from the nearest wet town, and we spent a lot of time at the ends of dirt roads or like in the corner of a dirt road drinking beer and then lighting whatever we could find on fire along to go with it. So we would pick up, because everybody drove a pickup truck, so we would just like pick up stuff off the side of the road, be it lawn chairs. We burned a recliner that somebody found on the side of the road once. It was whatever, tires, which were made horrible smoke. Kind of whatever we could do, we'd pick up and we would drink. We wouldn't even drink beer, actually, because like nobody liked the taste of beer. We would drink Boone's Farm wine.
Oh, yeah.
We'd drink like Mad Dog, like all this horrible, fruity tasting stuff. And we would always say we were going camping. and then that always ended up in the middle of a gravel road, and then yeah, it would always turn. I don't think we ever actually stayed out all night. We would eventually wander back home at like 3 or 4 in the morning because nobody was sleeping. So that was my typical Friday night era Texas. But you had to go to one town to buy beer and a different town to rent a movie if you wanted, and a different town to get pizza. If you wanted like beer and pizza and a movie, you had to go to 3 different towns to get it. That was my high school experience. But yeah, my actual 1997 experience, I was in college and I was on 6th Street somewhere, and I probably don't remember specifically what it was like, but it was a pretty wild Friday night too.
All right. Is that all the questions?
I think we made it through it all. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for all the folks on Blue Sky for sending us questions. Patreon folks, we hope we didn't offend you, but we also want to be, we don't want to bother you by asking for questions too often. So we decided to shake it up, but we'll definitely be asking Patreon for questions again here in the near future. I guess, yeah, come find us on the internet, maybe on Blue Sky more and more as the days pass. Check out the Patreon. We still have some stuff for this year's membership packages, and then we'll be spinning up something new here for the new year. And I think that's all. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with some Austin FC news, hopefully, and then whatever else happens between now and then. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, you never.
La gente. Oh my God.
Okay. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer.
Thanks for listening to Tower Soccer.
And then now say, Happy Thanksgiving, you turkeys.
Happy Thanksgiving, your turkeys.
Perfect.
Thanksgiving.